You know, it's really hard to talk about this in a bubble, the TAT, because as Mayor and Representative has said, we are looking at this, we're all one community and it affects each other. So I'm going to go to the justification sheets, and you talked a little bit about what is mentioned in the justification sheets for this bill, and I haven't totally made up my mind on this bill yet, but it does say, you know, the county's ability to do furloughs. And we here in the legislature, more so the governor, had to take a look at what can we do with labor. And I know you said that we're looking at possibly doing furloughs in the future. You guys are looking at furloughs in the future. The justification for this bill talks about knowing that you had or you could anticipate huge shortfalls. How is it that you could not look at labor last year when the negotiations were happening, even though you could balance your budget for that year?
It's a good question. I think bottom line is what we did is at the time we were negotiating, putting our the mayor has to submit his budget in the beginning of March. At that point, negotiations were ongoing. It wasn't clear what was going to happen. When we submitted our budget, we didn't anticipate that there would be furloughs. By the time the budget was passed by the council was June, there was discussions ongoing, and it wasn't until September that a final agreement was reached. Now, I guess we could have jumped the gun and say, well, we're going to factor in a furlough if one comes, but it's kind of a chicken egg. You'd only do it once it happens. Now, the question you ask, you could still say, once the furloughs were in place, could the county have instituted those furloughs? And that is a fair question to ask. And I think at the end of the day, what we said is we made a commitment to our employees that we'd not furlough for the remainder of this fiscal year, and that we want to honor that commitment. But we are going to be furloughing. At the end of this fiscal year, we are going to probably be following what the HG has set in place, and that means 2 furlough days per month. That will result in significant savings that will help us in balancing our budget in FY11, of which we have a $140 million shortfall. So part of it is where we were at the time that we were doing our budget, it wasn't clear what was going to happen in the negotiations. And when it did become clear, because remember there was that lawsuit that was brought on mandatory and permissive bargaining and whether you could, how you would do it, that had to be factored in. That went through the summer. And so it wasn't on the books yet. But now we are going to institute it. But as I mentioned, even if we would have furloughed, yes, it would have resulted in savings of about $12 to $13 million. But somehow to say because of that we're going to take your 43, that's not a fair trade.
One thing that was clear is that we were looking at a depressed economy. We were losing money not only on the state level but on the county levels. And that's concerning to me because that was clear. You knew that, you know, the counties did know that we were going to have huge challenges, but to not try to pre-address it, even if your budget was balanced, like we said, we're all a community here. Right. You know, so it does affect us one way or another.
So and this is what we did do. We did take hard decisions. We put spending restrictions on every department of 3%. We're adding another 4.5 this year, and that's a multiplier, by the way. It's, you know, it builds on itself, so the restrictions become bigger. So we did do that. We also eliminated 800 positions countywide, saving over $30 million. We all took a pay cut.
I'm learning a lot in this finance committee. Were those warm body positions?
Those are vacant positions,
vacant
now
positions?
eliminated.
Okay.
We all took a 5% pay cut. I left my law firm, took a huge pay cut to go to the city, and got there, and in 2 months I took another 5%. So these are real cuts. Everyone from the mayor on down did that. And then we put in our EMs were frozen, their pay was frozen. So, I mean, I can walk you through each of the things we did. So there was real pain, not only on the cut side, but on the raising of fees side.
And
so we did both.
I agree with you because
that's hard to do.
Because from 1 month to the other, my sewer fees went up double. So I agree with you that those fees did go up. Let me just ask you then, in talking about the decision not to furlough and not to, you know, to implement a furlough back then, because I think that that's a very key. Would you be looking at possibly letting us take some of that TAT, maybe the 12 to 13 million that would have been saved out of the 43?
You know, right now I think that all 43 is something that we need to continue to provide those services, and I would leave that up to the wisdom of your committee. But as my testimony was clear, we need every last cent. I beg your pardon? Yeah.
It is
And,
hard to swallow when you say we need every last cent when those type of decisions weren't made last year in anticipation of shortfalls. So that's, because I'm reading this justification sheet, you know, I understand why this is being discussed. The other thing that I would ask is,
To just finish,
Sure,
to
go
answer your
ahead.
question, as I mentioned earlier in our testimony, we're looking at a $140 million shortfall. If you take away the TAT, that's another 43, you're up to 183 million. We're assuming that TAT, the 43, is being used to balance our budget. So if you take any part of our TAT,
I
whether it's
understand
12 to 13 million or
I
all of
understand
it,
that.
our
And
budget
that
is out of
is-
balance by that portion,
and I
meaning we gotta
understand
look
that,
for
and
some other
maybe
way
the
to
cities,
assess it.
maybe the county should have thought about that last year. And that's my point, is like, maybe, we're not even talking about, I'm not even talking about the $43 million in TAT. I'm talking about the fact that right now, 140 additional million dollars is needed to balance the current budget for you. You know,
As I
and that
mentioned-
was not anticipated in the negotiations. What I also want to get at too is, there's another pot of money that we've been discussing about, and like I said, this is all a community, Mr. Speaker, this is all a community where all of these pots of money, you know, we have to take a look at. And the hard decisions that you're talking about also means that there is the rail fund that is completely protected from doing transportation.
As set by
As
this House
set
and
by-
Senate,
would
and the
you-
council can only be used for mass transit
Yes.
on this island, in the city and county.
Yes, which doesn't give you much flexibility on that.
No flexibility.
No flexibility. Would you
Absolutely
be
zero
against?
flexibility.
Would you be against the legislature giving you that flexibility?
No.
To be able, okay, because how much is in that rail fund?
Close to $500 million.
Close to $500 million.
$463
You're
million.
down $140 million without taking away the TAT currently. $140 million. These are the tough decisions that I think we all should be making. You know, we're talking about financial plans, we're talking about the ability to afford the rail, and we're also talking about what can we do to help people keep money in their pockets. I would like.
One of the best way to do that, by the way, is by building this rail system, because you're gonna have a $5.5 billion infusion of money into an economy that is shrinking every year and will continue to shrink probably for the next year or two. So if the only thing on the horizon that's gonna generate tax revenue to help us not furlough kids, to help us meet our basic core needs, is by building the rail system, by grabbing the money. You could grab it. You can't, but if you did take it, there's nothing on the horizon for next year, and you're going to be faced with a difficult situation next year. What you want is increased revenue, so you have a larger tax base, so you can then provide the services that all of our constituents demand. Anyway, just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Thank you.